make me a co-host too?
We are live now. Yes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. This is the meeting of the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee for the City of Santa Fe for January 26, 2021. Carlos, will you call the roll, please?
That's me, Jack.
I'm sorry, Elizabeth. Elizabeth, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Jack Hyatt.
Here.
Brian,
Here.
I'm sorry. Isaac Pino.
Here.
Kim Shanahan.
Here.
Monica Alt. Marshall Thompson. Mr. Thompson.
Here, how's that? Here,
Better.
And 3 vacancies, but you do have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll lead it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the, what I forgot to pledge.
America.
to the United States of America.
Go ahead, Kim.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, for liberty and justice for all.
You know, I'm having a lobotomy surgery on Friday, so that explains what's going on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, looking at the agenda, can we have, are there any changes from staff? Carlos?
There are no changes from staff, Mr. Chair.
Any changes from the members? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Kim.
All right. Take the roll, please, Elizabeth.
She did
Brian
that?
Lewis.
Yes.
Isaac Pino.
Yes.
Kim Shanahan.
Here.
Is
Yes.
your vote yes?
He said we were doing a roll again, but yes, I'm voting yes, and I am still here.
Thank you, Mr. Shanahan. Marshall Thompson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Looking at the next item, it's approval of minutes from November 17th of last year. Are there any changes from staff?
There's no change. There are some changes, but I made them as edited, so that's in your packet.
Okay, thank you. Any changes from the members? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, would you poll the members, please, Elizabeth? Thank you, Mr. Shanahan, for pointing that out. Poll.
Brian Lewis.
Yes.
Isaac Pino.
Yes.
Kim Shanahan.
Yes.
Marshall Thompson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Now to action items. This is the first item is the request for approval of $250,000 for parks. Let's see, Melissa, it's up to you. How are you?
Great. Thank you, Chairman, committee members. Nice to see you again. I'm here today to share news about a very exciting award that the city of Santa Fe received and to ask your support in securing funding for it. We entered a competition to be one of 10 cities across the United States to get a fitness court that is decorated with Keith Haring, a very famous street artist, positioned in the city of Santa Fe, and we were selected. And in fact, they're very excited about Santa Fe being an art community, being on the list. So we are very, very excited about this project. Essentially, it's equipment that would be decorated with the art. I've got a picture of it in the packet. And we're recommending that this be placed at Swan Park or Las Saleras, and we're leaning a little bit more towards Swan.
All right.
And
Is there,
I'm
sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, if you go down, if you scroll down in the packet, you can see where we've suggested a location. Essentially, this would be taking up a lot of lawn that's, reducing our water use. We also are suggesting this location because it's next to a play area where parents can work out and watch their children. You
tell me when you're through.
I will stand for questions.
All right, members, any questions to Melissa for our $250,000 door number 1? All righty. Not hearing any questions, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved to accept.
And is there a second?
Second.
Hello, Kim.
Second.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Marshall,
Would you
me,
poll the committee, please, Elizabeth?
Yes, sir. Brian Lewis,
Yes.
Isaac Pino,
Yes.
Kim Shanahan,
yes.
Marshall Thompson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you very much, and I hope you all will come out to the opening. I'll make sure to invite you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
We appreciate that. By the way, one of those books on the back of in your bookcase is crooked right there. It's a, oh, no, I'm just kidding. Make a book. All right,
Thanks so
second
much.
item. Thank you. Appreciate it. The next one is $750,000 of road impact fees for construction of the intersection improvements at Montezuma and Sandoval. Are you presenting this, Melissa?
Chairman, Regina Wheeler, Public Works Director here. Tom Graham is out of the office for
Okay.
and so Ramella and I are here to answer any questions you have about this item.
Good. Do you want to give us a brief introduction, or do you want us to just vote?
Just voting would be great. The brief introduction I would give is I think you guys are familiar with this intersection. It's the one near the courthouse, the new county courthouse. And it looks like a pretty good intersection, but what you'll notice is it's missing all pedestrian facilities. And so this is to add the pedestrian walkhead and proper ramps and crosswalks and that kind of thing at that. And it's a heavily used intersection by pedestrians. People do use the rail runner station here at the rail yard to commute back and forth from that facility.
Thank you. Any questions from the membership?
Is,
Hearing none, well, I'll entertain a motion.
question.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The improvements on the intersection, will they affect the, what is that, VFW or what? And the city offices, the city repair shop at all?
I don't think there's any right-of-way acquisition involved in these improvements. It's really just getting proper signal heads and crosswalks and ramps installed on the existing infrastructure.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion, Mr. Shanahan.
So moved.
Second.
Would you poll the committee, please?
Brian Lewis,
Yes.
Isaac Pino,
Yes.
Kim Shanahan,
Yes.
Marshall Thompson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Mr. Shanahan, we'd like more positive emphasis when you respond, please. We can't stand that negative stuff. All right, the next item is approval for up to $54,000 of road impact fee funds to be used as matching funds per the Municipal Actuarial Program for the construction intersection improvements at Allafria and South Meadows. Ms. Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair. As you can see, this is just for matching funds. We've secured the rest of the funding, I believe, through DOT. And so it's a great opportunity to fund these matching funds and leverage the rest of the project with $54,000 for these improvements.
Thank you. Questions from the membership? Motion.
Move approval.
So moved to pass.
I move for approval. Marshall seconded. Please poll the committee.
Brian Lewis,
Yes.
Isaac Pino,
Yes.
Kim Shanahan.
Yes.
Thank you for that enthusiasm. Marshall Thompson.
Yes.
All right. Motion
All right,
passes.
That's a way to pick it up, gang. Thank you. Letter D is request approval for $546,814 road impact fees for the construction of signal improvements at Richards Avenue, Beckner Road, and Mission Bend. This request replaces an earlier CIC approval for up to $500,000 and is comprised of up to $336,000 and change of weighted impact fees for an associated development by that's the large apartment complex going up there, and $200,000 in additional road impact fees as required, as needed towards the construction of the project. Ms. Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. This is another big opportunity for the city. This intersection is actually in need of improvements for better traffic flow and safety already. And we've negotiated with the developer to actually install this signal with the use of their waived impact fees, as well as any additional costs up to $200,000. And if you have further questions, I think Sally Pius is here, who knows quite a bit about it, and Noah Burke as well.
And I'd also like to comment a little bit. So the history, so the CIAC, as I kind of noted here, the CIAC already approved $500,000 for this project. It's already inside of the IFCIP. However, now we're figuring out the project is actually going to cost a little bit more. And so that's where we're asking for some of this buffer. I also do want to make a note in the agenda. I wrote approval of up to $546,814. It's actually $536,814. And you'll see that in all the rest of the associated materials. I must have just mistyped that in the agenda. So we're actually, the request is for $10,000 less. So it's for the $536,814. And again, how that would be structured is up to $336,814 for the waiver, and then up to $200,000 of additional funds from the existing roads impact fee account that could go towards that project in addition.
Thank you for that clarification. Questions from, go ahead, Kim.
Have we made a motion yet on this one yet?
Not
No.
yet.
So I'll move, so we can start discussion. So I'll move for approval.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded for approval. Discussion. Mr. Shanahan.
Yes, just to be clear, I think you said waiver of $300 and some thousand, right? And is that a waiver that has already been spent by the developers, or something that they will contribute in the future as their share of this? So the waiver is going to be a waiver of impact fees because of the contribution being made by the developers. Isn't that right, Carlos?
It's a credit.
Or Sally?
May I address it? I'm sorry.
Yep, absolutely, Sally,
Yeah,
welcome.
yeah,
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's actually a credit. It would be a credit. We have the draft impact fee agreement in your packet that still requires governing body approval. So at the moment, what they've done is they've taken their roadway impact fees that they owe on their project, and they have placed that into escrow. And so we've got an escrow agreement in place. We've got that money in the bank. As soon as we get this impact fee credit agreement approved by governing body, then those credits will go back to, they will, we'll allocate them to the developer, and they won't owe those fees, but they are building the signal. The thing that turned out during the process of the construction drawings and everything else, they're coming in on their bonding estimates about 200 grand above what they owe in the impact fees, which is why the Public Works Department wants to kick in that added 200,000. Did that answer the question?
No, but that's good information, but it doesn't quite answer the question. And,
Okay.
and here's where I'm going, Sally.
Okay.
The developer is going to get a credit for their contributions to this project. They're not being asked to pony up another couple $100 grand that could be a credit. We're going to give it to them. But the credit that they are given in the past in Las Saleras has been a little sketchy about how it has been tracked. And the reason this is important is because the developer can give or sell the credit that they have to another entity who actually would be the entity coming in to make building permit applications. So we saw that happen with Pulte, for instance, that the developers got a credit on some stuff. And then when Pulte bought their lots, they inherited those credits and they were able to use them against the impact fees that were assessed to Pulte for roads.
So,
And Pulte still had to pay for other stuff, fire and police, and maybe even parks. Well, that may have been lumped in there too. So it just gets to be a little different than our normal contribution of our impact fees to the things that Regina's already talked about, which is essentially with no partner developer per se. And so that's what I want to make sure that we're tracking, that if they're getting a credit of $300,000 and in round numbers, a house might have $3,000 worth of impact fees, when a house or a building or whatever gets built in the future happens, that we have the means to be able to chisel away at that 300,000 such that we can track it when it's back down to zero. And after that, the developer or building permit applier will pay the full freight of impact fees after that credit has been exhausted. And because this is a unique situation, it's just one that calls for a little more scrupulous attention to the detail than some of the other impact fees that we allocate. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? You follow all that?
Yeah, I think I'm following you. I don't think it's as complicated as it was in Los Solares because we have a development plan for an apartment complex, and the amount of impact fees assessed, roadway impact fees assessed, it's based on the schedule in effect at the time of the approvals, based on the square footage established by a development plan. So we already know for their project the total amount of assessed roads impact fees. They will still pay fire, they will still pay police, and they have to do whatever they do with the parks. I don't remember if they're building any park or whether they're just paying parks impact fees. I think they're paying the fees. But anyway, they owe all those other things. And this would transfer to a new builder if it changes hands, but because it's one signalized intersection that we will inspect and approve in one shot, we will come in there, and as long as it exceeds that amount that they get credits for, that kind of, you know, wipes the slate clean in one fell swoop. So there's a lot less of that tracking over time. They could sell it to somebody else who's building the project, and the requirement to build the I mean, it would carry all those same things. And there's in the agreements we worked in provisions that if there is a new owner that's going to construct the apartments and or the signal, they would have to maintain the financial guarantee that we have now would still have to be maintained until we actually accept a signal. So I think we have adequate protections in place and tracking in place for this project.
So if I understand, and Carlos is nodding his head. So if I understand it, it's essentially we have got one apartment project whose impact fees are roughly equal to this particular credit. And the reason that's important is because the apartment builder who would normally pay impact fees and get the permit is not the same as the developer. And the developer will have other subsequent land sales with other apartments or whatever. And those people at that point in time will have to pay full freight on impact fees because the credits will have been exhausted by that one apartment complex that's going to consume all those credits. Is that right, Carlos?
Yeah, and I think you've got a great question here asking about some of the complexities of it, because there can be complexities. I think for this project, exactly as you're saying, things can transfer. However, again, we are looking at one development project with one kind of square footage and thus one number of roads fees. And so we would credit 100% of those roads fees, and we're not going to credit any of those roads fees until we actually are getting those projects. And so all of that stuff is kind of working in. So rather than, different iterative approaches where we've got different types of projects, different types of permits coming in, it is going to be, one project, one development plan, one credit. So I think that
Okay.
does relieve some of those concerns there.
And Chair Hyatt, if I can jump in on this really quick.
Go ahead, Noah. Go ahead.
So as just a few points of clarification. So this developer is outside of the Los Solares master planned area. So they are doing a contribution outside that. So they will be paying all the other impact fees up until, except for roads. So the road impact fee is an agreement between the city and the developer to build that signalized intersection. They will be credited the amount of their engineer's estimate for each of the units when the units come in and pull building permit fees. If they exceed the amount of, if it exceeds, then they'll have to start paying road impact fees. Los Solares is very unique in the fact that all the residentially zoned parcels within Los Solares agreed to an affordable housing agreement. They also agreed to a parks agreement, but it does not include the commercial properties. And as far as what happened in Los Solares with the road impact fees, that was a settlement agreement and an annexation agreement, and then an impact fee agreement where the developer built those improvements and then turned it back into the city and said, we built this, we'd like to be credited this amount. The developer then was credited the amount of their road impact fees. And then as each parcel sold, they requested draws down from that, and we tracked it down. So what we would do is we'd write a letter to them saying that based off of their request, and their request would be, we'd like to pull this much from the amount of road impact fees that we've been allocated. And we'd like to bench it to this parcel. And so they did that. And now I believe there's $30,000 or less left in that account. And each time we would generate a letter to the master developer. We didn't give it to Pulte, but they would sell it. They would give it to Pulte, and then they could turn that in with their building permit. But actually the master developer who built the improvements is the one who gets the impact fees in that scenario. And the regional park impact fees is a multi-phased park, and all the residential development in Los Solares does not have to pay residential park impact fees. Rather, the master developer is building the park.
So no, I knew all that. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because the CIAC had to specifically request from Matt O'Reilly that particular piece of accounting that you just described. It had already been underway. The deal had already been made, and the credits and so on were underway before we realized as a committee that certain homes in that subdivision were not paying particular impact fees. And that was very alarming to us at the time until we got the explanation. Furthermore, that master developer is liable to build another bridge. Could cost them a couple $1 million. And they believe still, I think, that if they do that, that they might be able to come and get more impact fee waivers that have a marketable value for them as they go to sell some of their other parcels. So I bring it up just so that all of us who are on this committee are aware that we need to keep an eye on it, and that the history of it has been a little more opaque than we would have liked from the beginning. I do appreciate the fact that there is a great deal of transparency now between you, Noah, and Carlos and Sally. But again, I'm just reminding you, you've got a developer who will try all sorts of things, including suing for their perceived right for these sorts of things. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Kim. Are you asking, by the way, for another accounting of how these funds are distributed and waived and credited? Is it something that's normal in our whatever we get in advance of the meetings, our packet?
I don't know. It's what we used to get, Mr. Chair. In the past, we would get a spreadsheet that showed in the previous quarter all of the addresses, permit numbers, owners, and the amount of impact fees they paid into each one of the categories. And we would get that spreadsheet as our quarterly review, so we could see what was single family detached, what was an accessory dwelling unit, what was an office building, how much they paid, and whether or not they didn't pay anything in particular areas because they had waivers. So
okay.
We've not yet got that in this new iteration of this committee, but it is something that in the past we did get, which is how we were able to recognize that all these Pulte projects homes were not paying particular fees because of the waiver deal that had been arranged about Airport Road.
All right. So in my capacity as chair, would you, Carlos and Noah, please get together and see if it's easy to resurrect that accounting that was done before? And if not, please put it on the next agenda and report back why you can't do it. If it is, then please just put it in the packet. I think that would be helpful. All right.
Absolutely.
Now, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Are there other questions from members? All right, hearing none. Elizabeth, will you poll the committee, please? I'm sorry, Elizabeth, this is for an amended $536,814.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Brian Lewis,
Yes.
Isaac Pino,
Yes.
Kim Shanahan,
Yes.
Marshall Thompson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item E is a request for a recommendation amending Table 80, planned major road improvements of the IFCI plan for the next 6 or 7 years to expand South Side Transit from the approved maximum cost of $500,000 to a maximum of $1 million. Ms. Wheeler.
And Mr. Chair, let me try to
All right, go ahead.
let me talk about some of the process a little bit, and then I'll pass it over to Ms. Wheeler and Ramella to talk about some of the project specifics. So for this project, so we have a memo in your packet that's requesting that changing the transit center, the Southside Transit Center, is going to cost an additional, they're estimating $842,299.40. At the CIAC process, I always like to have more generals to give people more flexibility so we don't have to keep coming back to the CIAC. However, the difficulty is that in the CIAC plan that we just passed in December, the maximum allowable cost that we could spend on the Southside Transit Center is only $500,000. So what was approved in the IFCIP for 2021 to 2027 is $500,000. However, they're looking at somewhere around $850,000. So the first request that we're asking for is to go back to the IFCIP and amend that eligible projects table, Table 80, and put not $842,299.40, but actually $1 million, having $1 million as an overall umbrella eligible expense. And then at the same time, or as a separate process, we'll get into item F. And item F is actually requesting the $850,000 to be allocated towards this project. Are there any questions about what that kind of context is or what that approval is there?
Yeah, but I'm betting that Mr. Shanahan with the background noise.
Kim, I just muted you. Or do you want to, I'm going to unmute you on the phone.
Carlos, just mute him forever. All right. We'll wait for Kim to come back, but I understand what you're talking about. Did everybody else understand that? All right. Ms. Wheeler, do you want to add anything to this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the comments are probably most appropriate for the next item, but it's kind of the same item, just a different part of the process, right, Carlos?
That's correct.
What I could say is that I think you can see in the memo that this roundabout was selected as the safest and best traffic conducting method here at the new Southside Transit Center, where there's also a police facility. This Southside Transit Center is being created to accommodate the growth in that part of town. So right now, our only transit center is downtown on Sheridan, and there'll be another one on the south side to serve that growing part of town. The roundabout was identified as the best approach to manage traffic and pedestrian safety at that intersection. And the most recent design adds quite a bit of lighting, wider sidewalks. There's some right of way to be acquired. So it is more expensive than was originally imagined, but will be safer and better in the long run.
Okay,
I'll stand for questions.
thank you. Carlos, did I cut you off or had you completed your remarks?
I think I had completed my remarks. I'll talk a little bit more about some of the details for the next item. But again, for this item, it's really just making it an eligible project on the IFCIP. Recommending that will then have to go to the governing body.
Okay, Mr. Shanahan, we cut you off. Are you back?
Yes, I am.
And
And I
did
don't
you have-
remember, I had nothing to say, so.
Okay. Other members' comments, questions?
None.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve or deny.
So moved.
All right, thank you, Brian. A second, please.
Second.
That was Marshall. Poll the committee, please.
Brian Lewis,
Yes.
Isaac Peter,
Yes.
Kim Shanahan,
Yes.
Marshall Thompson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Now, which of you would like to go first on item F, the 850,000?
I could introduce some of the concepts again, what's being
Okay.
requested, and then Regina or Ramella can talk about some of the project specifics if needed. So for this, again, the specific request that we're looking at is estimating that around $842,000 is the cost for the rest of these improvements. In the agenda, I'm asking for up to $850 to be allocated and used towards this project improvement. And I think it's important to note that it will only be approved up to the amount that's in the IFCIP. And so that's where the up to 850, it could be anywhere between 500,000 that's in there right now, if the governing body denied increasing the expenditure, or it could go up to 850 with this current request. Does that make sense as far as what the request is for? Okay.
Yes. Ms. Wheeler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think I have anything to add from the previous statement. Happy to answer the question.
Okay. Members' questions. Anybody? Anybody know that there's a proposed apartment complex going in at that southeast corner of Santa Fe Place? Anybody heard that? I heard that at the Planning Commission from Jennifer Jenkins, that she had clients that were contemplating a rather large apartment complex there. So just me, as you're going forward, think about that if it's really true. All right. Let's see, did we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
All right, been moved and seconded. Without further conversation, please poll the committee.
Brian Lewis,
Yes.
Isaac Peter,
Yes.
Kim Shanahan,
Yes.
Marshall Thompson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Well, you guys are fun to deal with. Thank you. All right, the next item is staff communications with an update from Carlos on the impact fee capital improvement plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yeah, I wanted to formally announce that, excuse me, I wanted to formally announce that the governing body did approve the IFCIP 2021 to 2027. I sent the final copy to all of you, and so that is the final approved copy. I also sent a little bit of a cheat sheet. So again, the entire IFCIP is the state required inventory and everything that goes into calculating the different fees. But what's most important for the CIAC right now is just that Appendix G, which is the capital facility plan. So that's table 80 that we were talking about earlier, along with the other ones for the other projects. And so that makes it a much more succinct, the 3 pages that the CIAC really needs to know, that staff needs to know moving forward. Those 3 pages are the real core. Despite being the very end of the plan, are really what the entire plan is about. If there's any other questions on how we're working with the IFCIP, let me know. Again, the CIAC just recommended that we re-amend that plan to increase the amount for the Southside Transit Center improvements. There's also the capability that the CIAC re-enters into thinking about where we're assessing impact fees. So the ordinance that we passed established a relatively low baseline for impact fees with annually increasing amounts. But the assumption was that impact fee fund accounts have not been used too much, and we can reassess at a later date. As you've seen in the last few meetings, Parks, Roads, and Police has all brought projects forward to varying degrees. And so the CIAC, other staff members, Regina, that includes you, your staff, Melissa McDonald, et cetera, all of those different groups could always ask for the CIAC to re-look into how we're allocating and what those impact fees are set at and go through that process again. Per the state, we're required to pass another plan in less than 5 years, but we're also required to, per the ordinance, we're required to get back into impact fees and see if those annually increasing amounts are, if we're on the right track. And so that will be something that we'll have to look at in the next couple of years, but can always look at sooner. And so that'll leave up to the CIAC to decide what the need might be. Any questions about the approved IFCIP?
No, but thank you for all your work. Not from me, but thank you for all your work, Carlos. I know that you've carried this ball from beginning to end, and that's good, frankly, to have somebody work it up from the get-go and carry it. And I appreciate that, all the work that you've done. And you've also done, I think, a good job of making 60 pages worth of information into 1 page. Thank you. Other questions from members?
Mr. Chair, I've got a question that
Yes, sir.
I think can be answered here. So if I understand it, we've had this plan approved, we've put budgetary numbers to it, but the council will need to take a separate independent action to actually vote on a bond of a particular amount for a particular amount of time. That is every 2 years, or at least it has been in the past, and maybe you have some memory on this. So the question is when will the council actually start going forward with the bond request and the vote that they will have to make, and how much will it be for, and so on? So can anybody?
Ms. Wheeler, is that a question?
I'll tell you what it is, and I'll tell you why I'm leading to the question. I know that Regina has had some conversations with the Santa Fe Housing Action Coalition with the notion somehow that money potentially could go into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that could be potentially attached to a bond request that was for capital projects, or it could be an independent bond that was specific just for the Housing Trust Fund. And nobody really yet knows when that ask of money would be made if it was attached to the larger capital improvements bond request. So I'm just trying to figure out how all of those pieces fit together here.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, this is actually, Kim, it's interesting you raise this issue. I was going to raise this issue under item number 7 because I think it's completely unrelated to the issue we're listening to right now. So I wonder if we should just finish with 6A and then move on to this discussion about the bond, affordable housing, and Tierra Contenta Phase 3 and all of that stuff, because I was interested in a conversation about that as well.
All right. Kim, can we postpone that for a couple of minutes?
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely. Thanks, Regina. Thank you for that.
Carlos, I don't think that your update needs approval, but it may generate other questions. Any other questions from members? Lewis, Thompson?
No, sir.
No.
No, Mr. Chair.
All right. Then Carlos, once again, thank you very much. And Noel, I know you did something here. I don't know exactly what it was, but thank you.
You're welcome, Chair.
All right. B is, that was not enthusiastic, Noel.
You're welcome.
Oh, good, okay. The 2021 financial update for quarter one, expectations, Carlos?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. So I wanted to update you all. So I did get a quarter one data for fiscal year 2020, 2021. And so finance was able to provide us with the impact fee revenue that's come in for that quarter. However, it also sounds like it might be difficult to be getting additional information from the finance department. It sounds like the finance department is quite constrained. And so the finance department has said more or less that they may not be able to provide additional information until the end of the fiscal year. And once they actually get that. So I'm not too sure how much more information I'll be able to get through the finance department. I may be able to use different land use connections to figure out how different revenue sources are working. And I am also trying, I believe it was Member Shanahan that brought up a better accounting since the last meeting of addresses, what the projects are, inputs, things like that. I may be able to pull all that through the land use department permitting systems. However, as far as the finance department goes, it may be somewhat difficult to be getting more of this information. So I'm trying to investigate different ways to keep the CIAC up to date, but I do just want to fill you in with some of that information.
Carlos, I'd like to suggest, in lieu of hearing from Kim Shanahan, because I know where his brain goes in this stuff, you know that we have 5% administrative fee available to you. Could that help you if you have a body?
It's 3% share. So we have 3% share. I believe that Land Use Director Eli Isaacson is planning on using that next year. I can't comment on how that will be used or yeah, I think, you know, if the CIAC has suggestions, there might be some room there. But again, I can't really comment on what those administrative fees might be or what those might be used for.
Before I make a suggestion,
Mr. Chair.
I'm coming to you, Kim. I'm coming.
Okay.
Mr. Shanahan. I will not forget you. Go ahead.
Carlos, I'm sympathizing with the position you're in, but I have to say this is freaking outrageous that we are not going to get impact fees collected from October, November, and December of 2020 until July of 2021. That's crazy. That's crazy. It's outrageous. I mean, supposedly we're better at this stuff than we were 4 years ago before we spent all the money on the ERB and so on. And the fact that the finance committee cannot produce within one quarter the previous quarter's collections is crazy. So, are you agreeing with me when you put your hand up, Mr. Chair? Or are you waving off Jackie?
I'm waving at my wife. She's taking the dog for a walk. But yes, I agree with you. Outrageous, outrageous, outrageous. Elizabeth, I'll edit my remarks when I see your draft minutes. But the fact of the matter is, I'm concerned too, Carlos. And we've talked about how to spend this money. I don't understand why Eli is, I assume, by what you've said, you don't know that Eli is intending to authorize any of this money for this purpose. It seems like I don't know. It would be automatic if I were still the land use director and you told me I had 3% of this amount of money to spend on something that would help my staff get what they need to give this committee what they need in order to make decisions in a timely fashion. I'd be all over that like stink on poop. Sorry. You probably never heard that before, did you, Regina? No, I know. So that's my impression. How about Marshall, Brian, Ike?
I mean, you said it very succinctly. If I was in the same position, I would be doing the same thing. The more cash I can get to my staff to get things done, I'm all over that.
And
well, just to be clear, I mean, if we collected 3%, it wouldn't necessarily go to land use to produce what we need. it would go to an entirely different department. And it would basically be throwing money at finance, and it may be the money isn't the problem over at finance. It very well may be personnel or priorities or something else entirely. They just don't like Carlos for some reason.
So,
I think, Carlos, that this is going to require more conversation between you and Eli, and then a private offline conversation between you and me.
And I do really want to caution us about speculation. I don't want us to be speculating that the money won't be used. I don't want us to be speculating about, where finance is at. There's a lot of difficulties that I certainly don't understand. I do also want to caution the board, this is all recorded on YouTube. So the minutes might not always reflect sentiments, but YouTube certainly does. So just remember that as well.
And Chair, I might just also say that Carlos has worked very, very diligently to try to obtain a lot of the information that we're talking about here. So, and tirelessly. And so I would suggest that if the board members and the committee members have stances on this issue, that you put it in writing and that you address that writing to the people who make some of these bigger decisions. That would be my suggestion. I know at Planning Commission, when they have a strong stance on things, they write a position paper. So I would suggest that, and that can come from you as the board and go to where you would like it to go through staff. So if that's something the board would like to do, I would suggest that.
All right, I will take that under advisement and communicate with our on-staff resident writer, Mr. Shanahan.
You always edit everything I say down to just kind of mealy-mouthed lawyer speak. So, and by the way, for the point of view of those on YouTube, everybody loves Carlos Gamora. So I know that the finance department does too.
Is that a motion? No, I'm kidding.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr.
All right.
Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr.
I,
Chairman.
do you have any thoughts?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Seems to me, having fired two finance directors during my time and not really finding it very difficult to do, makes me wonder why we're having such a difficult time dealing with finance, or just avoiding it, causing everyone else a end run around and ways to figure out how to get things done. That shouldn't happen. There still is a finance committee I trust, and a finance committee chair and somebody who staffs it. All these things need to be brought out and dealt with. You have too much to be doing with very little to do it with. And I think it's time to deal with that problem, because we've been hearing about it at every meeting since I got on this committee.
Okay. Brian, do you have any thoughts?
None that will be additive to this discussion, but I'm in agreement that this is frustrating, but nothing else to say.
All right. So, Carlos, I suggest that you call me later on and we'll talk more about it. Kim, I'm sure I'll be calling you. And it's, if I haven't expressed my concern, I'd like to try it again, but I don't want to take up your time to do this. I am concerned, Carlos, and that's money that we should use and use wisely. And if that means going to help finance do something that we need them to do, and we get accountability for that money that we spent, great. But I can't believe we're having this discussion. Okay. Anything else?
And again, just to make sure that this isn't an attack on the finance department, I do want to express that they've told me about the massive amounts of vacancies that they have and the difficulty they have maintaining, the very keeping everything above water. And so I think that's really where it's come down to priorities a lot for them. And I also want to express, that there are probably ways that independent citizens like yourselves are able to act in ways that I can't. So there's a lot of different things to think about here. And so I think that there's the concern is well noted. But yeah, I would encourage the board to continue to be concerned, but also to be sensitive to whatever the concerns might be, and constructive with the city, which I think that the board is doing. So thank you.
I agree. Constructive always makes sense. Any other comments on this? We don't need a vote on this either. As I see, it's just an update. So we'll move to matter 7, which is matters from the floor. And we know Ms. Wheeler is going to be recognized. So let's start with her. Ms. Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to ask a question about the sort of current thinking about TR Contenta Phase 3 and that road that we had talked about seeking funding for in the next GRT bond. I think I have an update on that GRT bond that we were actually confident that we would be pursuing this year, that I now understand probably will not be pursued this year. That's probably largely based on the fact that the November GRT numbers did come in almost a full 20% below previous year. So revenue to the city is, underperforming as expected due to the COVID shutdowns. And so I think, and sort of looping in the comments that that Kim made, is that, we have 2 big outstanding requests that we're waiting for that bond, as well as many others, for Affordable Housing Trust Fund and the extension of the road for TR Contenta Phase 3. So I was kind of wondering what the status of that TR Contenta Phase 3 expansion was.
Well, as the president of the board of directors of both Tierra Contenta and the Housing Trust, I'm happy to tell you that we've engaged Jennifer Jenkins. We're moving ahead with the amendment. We expect to be in the queue probably, I'd say, the next 2 or 3 weeks, but I can't tell you. I don't remember what the last report from her was, but so I'd say we're going full force forward with it, and we want to renew our request to you to keep us included. I mean, we're going to, we heard something in that conversation that was interesting to me, and that was, why didn't we pursue other financing from more normal business entities? And I have followed up on that as well. So we're thinking about different ways. We're not just throwing all of our hopes into the city. So I will come back to you. And in fact, frankly, I was going to ask you to call me later too, so that we could talk more specifically about that. But I can tell you that it's not over by a long shot. Kim, did you want to add anything? I'm sure you do. Come on.
Well, not specifically to TR Contenta, but I do want to just make sure I understood Regina. Regina, I think I heard you say that there will be no vote on the city council to get a bond for capital improvements in 2021. Is that for any purposes? Is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wouldn't be quite that absolute about the language. I think what I said was we were confident there would be a bond, and now it is we are not confident there would be a bond. And I think it'll be we'll probably watch revenue for a few more months and decide if it's going to bounce back a little bit better than we expected before we increase the debt of the city.
Okay. And so when you say, just to be clear also, when you say this year, do you mean the year that ends June 30th or December 31st as potentially the year?
I think since we'd be waiting 3 months to even make a decision would be this is just a rough estimate, that I think we'd be talking about the calendar year, because we're not going to make fiscal year anymore for a bond.
Right. And just to be transparent about why I'm asking this line of questioning, because the Santa Fe Housing Action Coalition is needing to decide whether or not it wants to go all in on a GO bond, which would be a bond that is voted on by the public that would most likely be voted on in the November municipal election. And if it turns out that there's no opportunity to have funding come from a capital improvements bond, because it may not happen until 2022, then they would need to put most of their resources into winning that vote, including the first vote of 5 votes for the city council to even put it on a ballot. So that's why, Regina, I think you understand why I'm trying to flesh that out a little.
Yes, and I'd like to comment on that because I've been getting similar questions, I think, from somebody about the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. It's kind of not either or. I mean, I think there is. I think a GRT bond is easier than a GO bond, and I think a GRT bond is probably more likely than a GO bond. And so I think it's probably at this point what we'd be thinking about is a later GRT bond. We were expecting to do one in the spring. Maybe I think it's probably more likely later in the fall after we have some confidence the economy will be rebounding and the revenues will be rebounding correspondingly. I think it still makes sense to put effort into a GRT bond rather than a GO bond, because a GO bond requires an increase in tax rates for residents, which in a year where people have been hit so hard financially probably won't be palatable. But I think a GRT bond may very well come back into possibility as we see GRT revenues recover.
So when you say a GRT bond specific for the Housing Action Code or for the Housing Trust, are you thinking of a bond that would be independent of being attached to a capital improvements bond, which would be much larger than a GRT bond just for the Housing Trust?
I was actually talking about a 20 million GRT bond. That's what we had committed to on the semi-annual, every 2 years, that would have, the affordable housing piece, which would be the trust and the and TR Contenta road expansion, and then also other capital needs as there are quite a number of them. But it's an interesting idea, Kim, to raise the possibility to finance director and the mayor and governing body about the possibility of a smaller bond, really just targeting affordable housing or maybe other funding mechanisms for that. So I think it's something that I could start that conversation, is that we haven't talked about a smaller bond just for affordable housing, but that actually might be quite palatable.
One last comment about the, if I may, one last comment about the general obligation bond and the fact that it is attached to property taxes and a mill increase compared to the GRT. Anybody that owns a home right now is getting land richer every day. And so it's for those who don't own homes and can't afford rent that we would be thinking about a GO bond to finance the Housing Trust Fund. So anyway, that was editorial.
Regina, it would, if they went forward with the GO bond, is that something that the city would look poorly on?
I just think it's more difficult in a year like this. It's an election year for elected officials. It's been a hard economic year for our residents. And, I think a lot of people understand what Kim just said, which is that, our rates are probably low. Irregardless, I think it's less, it's harder to pass a GO bond in a year like this. Plus, the county just did a bunch of them in the last election. So we kind of, we'd be following on their coattails. And I think a GRT bond is a whole lot easier to do. And the city's getting very, very close to having quite a bit of GRT bonding capacity. It's retiring a lot of bonds over the next couple of years. So I think just later in this year, with a little bit of more revenue from the GRT, some size of a bond is likely. And I'll definitely start the conversation about the possibility of a smaller GRT bond just for affordable housing sooner, possibly. And then we could follow it later with another issuance for broader capital needs.
All right. Well, for a number of reasons, I'd be anxious to hear how those come out and whether or not we can play a role that could help move that forward. Other questions from members about this issue? Bonds? Any other matters from the floor? Carlos, do you have anything?
I do not, Mr. Chair.
All right. Noah, do you have anything?
No, I don't, Chair. Thank you.
Sally still on? Sally, do you have anything?
I'm here and I do not.
All right. Members, Brian, Marshall, Ike, anything? Matters from the commission? All right.
Chair
Membership-
Hyatt.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I was just going to note that there's two items I think that the committee should talk about in matters from the commission.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I see. Those are I'm sorry. They're not indented appropriately. No, I'm kidding. Membership updates, resignations and reappointments. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm leaving. So now, do you need me, Carlos, in order to make a quorum from time to time? In other words, I'm stalling on leaving until you get somebody, if you got enough members. That's what I'm saying.
Chair Hyatt, I think my assumption was that this would be your last meeting and that you were coming in for quorum. My assumption is also that prior to any additional needs being met by the CIAC, that the city would have to appoint a full committee, and thus that the city really needs to move forward on that to get that new committee. I'd kind of defer to Sally Paez and Noah Burke about whether we should, maintain you just for quorum purposes for now. But my assumption is that we might be fine going through an appointment process before the next meeting we have.
Chair
Okay,
Hyatt,
well, my rate goes up a considerable amount when I'm here against my will.
Chair Hyatt,
Mr. Chair,
to force you into service. However, it would be nice if you're willing to postpone your resignation until your replacement has been appointed, if that's something that you are able to do.
I miss you all terribly. So, Elizabeth, if you'll just note for the minutes that I agree with Ms. Paez, and I'll defer for a while. Go ahead, Tim.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So, contrary to how Carlos characterized it, that the city needs to do something, it's a little more specific than that. It is the mayor and 2 city councilors who need to do something. And Mr. Chair, I would suggest that you may leave after you have contacted those 3 individuals and told them to get off their ass and make the damn appointments.
Okay.
And that can go in the record.
Get off your ass, Mayor. And okay, no, I got it. All right.
Well, and one of the other city councilors, I believe, is one of your golfing buddies. So I believe Carlos, do you know off the top of your head? I think it's Commissioner Lindell. And I don't know who the other person is who is ignoring us, but somebody else is too.
Carlos, if you'll tell me, I'll make those calls. I will.
Absolutely. So Mayor Weber currently has a vacant position. I'm also going to say member Monica Alt asked to resign earlier, and I've kind of also kept that member on for quorum purposes, but that member I think we could functionally say has resigned. And so Councillor Villarreal also has a vacancy. Councillor Lindell has a vacancy, and Councillor Abeta has a vacancy.
Hold on while I write
So,
this
Mr.
down.
Chair, Mr. Chair, you got your work cut out for you. While you're at it, fill up the planning commission.
Lindell and Villarreal, and who?
Councillor Abeta.
Abeta. I'll get it. Okay. All
And
right.
member Shanahan, I believe that both the Planning Commission and the Board of Adjustment are all filled up now.
Really?
So,
Wow.
So,
Can you
wow.
tell us
So
who
they
you're
were waiting
appointed?
they were waiting to get rid of the chair before they got back to business. That was smart. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I heard he was a really weak chair. Okay.
Good guys.
Are you up to date on reappointments, Carlos?
I believe so. I assume that nothing has changed and that the 4 remaining members still want to be reappointed. I'm not sure how that process is going to go. I believe that it's all going to be entirely up in the air, and everyone's going to have to either remake those appointments or make new appointments. And Chair Hyatt, I did also want to mention that I don't remember who took over Councillor Ives' position. Sally or Noah? Who took over?
I think it's
No.
Michael Garcia.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Michael Garcia. So So Chair Hyatt, if you're leaving, then that also opens up Michael Garcia's position. And there,
No,
I think it really is a comprehensive reappointments or appointments of vacant seats.
That
Carlos,
sounds like 5.
Carlos,
that right?
I think that Mike Garcia's seat is District 2, and I think Member Thompson is District 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that seems like
That's correct.
I'm in District 4.
Yeah, and yeah, so you're in District 4, Chair Hayes. That would be Councilor Cassett Sanchez or Councilor Vigil Koppler, who would be appointing for that position.
And I do want to remind everyone that the seats are not appointed by district. You don't have to be a city resident. You don't have to live in a specific district. Anybody can appoint any non-government employee. I'm not eligible. Regina, Sally, Jesse, and Noah Burke are not eligible to be on the CIAC. Elizabeth Martin is eligible to be on the CIAC. Other members are able to be eligible on the CIAC. And so that really is making sure that we get the best committee, not specifically district representatives. Again, it can be, it cannot be, it's not a legal requirement there. What is a legal requirement is that we have at least 4 members that represent, let me bring out the language here a little bit, that we need a minimum of 4 members that are representative of the real estate, development, and building industries. And so currently we do have a few members that represent those three groups, but new members, again, a certain amount of them will have to represent, again, that's the building, real estate, and development industries.
Okay.
What if you're retired from them?
That counts. That counts.
You count, Ike.
Okay.
You count, I count, Marshall counts.
I don't believe it specifies how we determine what counts. It just requires that they are representing in some way. And so I think that's to some degree a self-classification of whether you represent that. Again, there may be more legal language that we could dig into, but I believe it's self-representative of those 3 industries.
So it sounds like with Chair Hyatt finding his replacement and a few others, we're potentially looking at 5 new members, which would be the new quorum. Certainly won't probably happen before our next meeting, but it's certainly going to happen within the next quarter or 2. And so staff, I would just suggest that we very well may need to have a retreat of some sort to bring the 5 new members who will be a quorum in and of themselves to understand what the role of this committee actually is. And after I do that, then I'll resign.
You've been here longer than dirt. Okay, so now we're talking about the election of an interim chair and a vice chair.
I would move to adjourn.
Second.
Are you sure
All
you
in
don't want to
favor?
talk about that anymore? No. You don't get
Can you call the roll?
Stop that. So let me ask, Carlos, do you want to postpone this until the next meeting and see what happens? Or I know that they were thinking about not taking the elections at the Planning Commission until they had a full committee. Is that your feeling as well? Or Noah, either of you have input on that? Or Sally? And Regina, you can have an opinion too.
Chair Hyatt, I brought up interim just so that if you were resigning this meeting, that it would be good to start the next meeting with an interim chair. And once the new quorum comes in, then we could establish a permanent chair. So at this point, my recommendation is to either revote a new interim chair and or a new interim vice chair, and then at the next meeting with a full quorum, that can we put that out again and create a new one? But I think to some degree.
We have
I forgot.
left. Sorry, Jack.
I'm sorry, what?
I was asking if we have a vice chair.
I was just going to ask the same thing. I forgot who the vice chair was. Who is the
At
vice
this
chair?
point, there is no vice chair.
Okay.
Oh, I'll let him or her do it.
So if we were to have another meeting and Chair Hyatt wasn't present and we don't have a vice chair, we could still have a meeting. The first thing we would have to do is someone on the committee would have to open up with a motion to designate a chair pro tem to conduct the meeting until we get to elections, basically. So it's not that we're left without, a leader. It's something we can resolve as necessary. So in that way.
Carlos, when do you expect to call the next meeting?
Except Sally, if he resigns and we don't have a replacement, we won't have a quorum. And therefore we can't even nominate a interim.
Right. I mean, once new members were appointed and we meet with new members and no established chair, that would be the process. I mean, if we don't have a quorum, we don't have a quorum for anything, and that's okay until we appoint folks, but.
Well, let's not make this hard. I'll stick around until you can get rid of me, because I'd really like to go. Kim. So.
And again, my suggestion was having an interim chair just so that when we actually have quorum, everyone can kind of have a first meeting and then establish a chair and vice chair. But again, I think it's up for whatever the committee thinks works best.
Well, I'm okay to postpone if you'd like, Kim.
I would like to postpone. Jack, I've been on this committee for over 20 years and I've never been put up for chair or vice chair. And I think there's probably a good reason for that. So I would prefer that you find a few replacements and beat the bushes out there, even offering suggestions for nominations for those counselors who don't even have a clue of what we do or why we do it or how important it is. So as your last gasp as a chair, stock us up with some good people, please.
You know that volunteering for more work was not part of my plan today, but okay. All right, then I'll accept that as a responsibility that unless I die in the interim, I'll try to get it done. Are there any other items that need to come before us? Let me just check. Is that everything? I mean, yeah, that's everything. Anybody else have any matters to come before the committee?
Just
if not,
one last thing, because Jack could always use the help. Anybody who's got any suggestions for new members that could be forwarded to other counselors, let Jack know, because Jack would appreciate that, I'm sure.
What does it mean because Jack needs the help, Kim? Don't be cutting me out like that. All right. So I agree. Anybody got any ideas? Let me know. And that includes staff if you've got some ideas. I mean, make it your next door neighbor. I don't, we're looking for intelligent people. All right. If we don't hear anything else, did you have anything else, Carlos?
I do not, Mr. Chair.
All right. Hearing nothing else. Thank you, everybody. Regina, thank you very much. Nice to see you again. Happy New Year to everybody. And take care of yourselves. Stay healthy, stay well, and we're adjourned. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.